no matter what. No matter what our world does, no matter what you experience in your life, right? No matter who it is, we want to have the mission of growing lifelong disciples who trust in Jesus. And so we want to prepare ourselves for the future, knowing that it's going to be a world where things may not be nice and rosy and easy to be a Christian, right? We want to prepare ourselves for the future so that everybody knows in every season of their lives, whether they're single, whether they're going to college, whether they're in high school, whether they're a student at Trinity, whether they're a student in the public schools, whether they are new parents of young children, whether they're children who are maybe a little bit older and they've got them at home, no matter whether you're an empty nester, maybe you got grandkids, maybe you're brand new to the area, so that every season of life, you know what it means to live as a disciple of Jesus, right? What we don't want, it'd be very, very easy to get people to come to church, right? Just give away free iPads and you got a lot of people here, right? What happens when you stop giving away the iPads? You're probably not going to come anymore, right? We want everything we do to invest in lifelong disciples. And sometimes people ask me, well, what is a disciple? We would say that a disciple lives in a right relationship with God and a right relationship with the world. Because that's what we believe, right? I always kind of think of the sign of the cross, right? Vertically, we live in a right relationship with God, and horizontally, we live in a right relationship with the world around us. And disciples of Jesus can take their right relationship with God that God gives to us and apply that to their relationships with the rest of the world. That's what we as Trinity Lutheran Church and school and childcare and everything we do, we want it to be all about how we form those relationships with God and the world. And to do that in a lifelong way. So that's what our mission for the future, what we're looking at. And how many of you have a family that you go home to, or maybe maybe you're single, but you got a family that maybe you travel and go see it sometimes? How many of you have a family? All right, a couple of liars, but okay, all right. How many of you have some sort of community, whether it's a neighborhood or a place of work, have some sort of community, whether it be friends or a school? All right, still a couple of liars, but okay, right? And also, how many of you have a church? All right? We want to see the gospel that tells us about our right relationship with Jesus, that you are forgiven, that you have eternal life. We want that gospel to be alive in our families, in our churches, in our community. That's what we want to help accomplish. So we would say, if we do that mission of growing lifelong disciples, if we help people to be those lifelong disciples of Jesus, what do we want to see happen? Well, we want those disciples to go out into their different realms of their life, right? Their families, we want their families to be alive in the gospel, to be praying for one another, to be caring for one another, to be talking about Jesus with one another, right? We want a church, if the gospel's not alive in church, we're doing something wrong, right? We want a church where the gospel's alive, where we've got each other's backs, where we're reminding each other of the forgiveness that we have in Jesus. And we want to bring that gospel into our community, right? If we grow lifelong disciples, we think that we will see the gospel alive in our family, our church, and community. That's what we think our calling is as a church, right? To influence the world for Jesus, right? And so that is our goal, all right? That's our mission and our vision. So, how do we do this? All right, so if our values tell us why we exist, and our mission and vision is what we feel compelled to do because of the values that we have, well then, what does it look like when the rubber meets the road, right? What does it look like to be a church of disciples? And this is where we refer to what we say are our pillars. So we think that a disciple has those right relationships when they are kind of clicking on 4 different areas, all right? And this is probably going to sound a little familiar to you, all right? We would say that pillar 1 is word and sacrament. So disciples of Jesus are people who are engaged in word and sacrament. People encounter Jesus regularly and frequently through word and sacrament. Where does Jesus promise to meet us? Where does he promise that when we meet him there, we will encounter him? In his word and in the sacraments, right? Baptism and communion and the forgiveness that we give to each other. That's what it's all about. So we would say that disciples of Jesus are engaged in that pillar 1, word and sacrament. Then we would also say that disciples of Jesus, pillar 2, are engaged in community. And this is not just any old community. You know, if you go to a Bears game, right, or if you go to a Cubs game or a White Sox game, that's a community in a sense, right? You share your fandom with all those other people, or maybe if you're a Cubs fan, maybe not so much the White Sox, the Cubs. But you get what I'm saying, right? Like there are communities out in the world, but as the Church of God, we have a different kind of community, right? We are a community that is built on the word of Jesus. We share the hope of Jesus. So it's in this community that people apply God's purposes and his promises in our families, in our church, and out in our community. That's where we learn how to do it, right? And then we got pillar 3, which is relationships. So a disciple who is engaged in word and sacrament regularly and frequently, who is part of a Christian community where they're learning about God's purposes and promises and how to apply them in their lives, we would say then that they can influence people in their relationships. Remember how many of you raised your hands when you said that you knew somebody who didn't know Jesus? I'm guessing that most of us, unless you're like a pastor or a teacher or somebody up here, you don't work at a church. You probably work somewhere secular, right? The Holy Spirit uses your relationships to bring people to the knowledge and faith of Jesus, right? And so we want to be a church where you learn and you feel comfortable sharing Jesus in those relationships. That you are discipled, you know what it means to have a right relationship with God and with the world, so that you can influence your neighbors in Christ, right? And then finally, pillar 4, mission. I tell you what, when I got to Trinity, and even before I got to Trinity, when I had just heard of Trinity, they were like, hey, we're looking for a pastor, are you interested, right? I Googled you guys, I went on your website and all that kind of stuff. And one of the first things that I saw was how generous you are and how much of a love you have for people that don't know about Jesus, learning about Jesus, and how many different missions and 501c3s and nonprofits that have spun off from Trinity and are doing wonderful things in our world. That is something to be proud of. That's something to be excited about. And I think that's probably worth giving yourselves a hand over right now. That's awesome. So all that is to say that we'd say that the 4th pillar, so what do disciples of Trinity do? Well, they're engaged in word and sacrament. They're engaged in community. They're engaging their neighbors in relationships that where they can learn about Jesus. And people serve as the body of Christ locally and globally. It's that we in the joy of Jesus, we share that hope that we have in Jesus locally in our communities, right here in Roselle. That's why I do things like the clinic and the toy store, right? Why we support our food pantry, why we're supporting also our maternity home right now. But it's also why we do that globally. It's why we send people out on mission trips. It's why we support missionaries. It's why we try to move the church of God around the globe. And we would say that we want disciples of Jesus here at Trinity to be involved in all 4 of those pillars. So that is what we are looking forward to for our future, all right? So as a quick recap, because there's going to be a quiz, all right? I'm joking about the quiz, all right? But our values, abiding in the word of Jesus, and he brings us together, and we find belonging in Christ through his word. We live out that truth, all right? And that truth cultivates us for our vocations in the world. And then we got proclaiming the gospel so that we can do that in our relationships. That's why we exist. Our mission and our vision is to grow lifelong disciples and disciples who are in right relationships with God and with the world. Our vision is that by growing lifelong disciples, we'll see the gospel alive in our family, our church, and our community. And then finally, we want to paint a picture of what those disciples look like. And so those disciples are engaged in word and sacrament. They're engaged in a community that transforms them. They engage in relationships because of that transforming community with the world around them so that others can be influenced by Jesus. And then finally, pillar 4, our mission is that we're engaging in mission work both here and abroad. That's what we're about. That's what we are looking forward to for the future of Trinity, and that's how we want to be instruments of God as He works in and through us for the sake of our world. Because we don't want to be an inward-focused church, right? If you want to be an inward-focused community, you can join a country club, right? There's probably plenty of those around here. We want to be a church that exists for the sake of the world. We want to be a church that exists for the sake of our children. We want to be a church that exists for the sake of your grandkids, right? We want to still be around. We want to still be bringing up new citizens, not just of our world, but citizens of heaven. That's what our future is, and we're prepared for it, right? That's what our goal is to do. All right, so with that, let me hand it over to Carole and Theresa. Can you talk about how this is all going to be possible? Carole Arco is our Director of Operations here at Trinity, and then Theresa Mittelbrun is our Generosity Coordinator.
Yeah, so Pastor, talked just about our mission right now and making lifelong disciples, and every one of us in the room is a disciple who's somewhere on our journey of discipleship. Maybe we're old and gray. I hide mine a little. Deep in our faith. Maybe we're new to faith. Maybe we're growing as we go. And so making lifelong disciples is about each of us, and it's about all of those people that we want to touch. And so we aren't going to be able to accomplish our mission of making lifelong disciples if everyone in this room isn't part of that, and those who aren't here today. So we really need people's generosity of their time, their treasures, their talents. So this isn't just about giving, although that's a part of it. God loves a cheerful giver, and He asks us to tithe all the things He's given us. So if you're tithing, great. If you're not, you want to work towards that, or you want to work beyond the tithe. He's calling us to that. He's calling us to service. So we have an incredible staff here at Trinity, and you all know that, and they did just fantastic jobs throughout COVID. But also all of you helped where you could. And we're going to continue to need your service and your talents. So maybe you have a talent for finance or organization or teaching or building, whatever it is. Think about your talents and how you can be using them as we go forward to make lifelong disciples. We'll talk a little bit about giving and budget, but I think what's to say there is Pastor talked about giving remaining strong throughout the pandemic. Giving, if you look at this year to last year so far through May, it's going down a little, but some of that has to do with Imagine campaign ending. And also giving to the operating fund, though, has remained flat. So that's good. People are being consistent in their giving. As we look forward, though, we know that inflation is hitting all of us. So it's, 8.5%, I think, is the latest I saw. So every time you go to the gas station to fill up your car, it's sticker shop for sure. So we need all of us to think about our own personal situation and inflation and how it impacts us and how it's going to impact the kingdom going forward. So what can we do as each of us and as the church as a whole so that going forward we are able to support our mission of making lifelong disciples?
So I just want to take a minute to kind of just briefly discuss the financial position here at Trinity. I know you're all aware of the challenges that we experienced in the past couple of years with the pandemic, and when we went on lockdown, we had staff that were not working, so we had a child care center that closed for a few months, adult daycare closed and has not yet reopened. No plans to reopen that. But we applied for and received forgiveness for 2 PPP loans during that time. One was $610,000 and the second one was $604,000. Additionally, we've received state grants that have supported our child care center and kept it up and running and that staff employed. So we are really grateful for all of that. And additionally, we are just really very blessed by a staff that stepped up and continue doing ministry through all of this. I see many of them are here. We have the child care staff, we have church staff, we have school staff, and let's give them a round of applause for how hard they work. But also, we couldn't have done this without all of you, because you continue to support all of us, and you continue to support this church with your generosity. And because of this, we are in a strong cash position right now. As we work on our budget for next year, we know we're facing some challenges. As Theresa mentioned, we know inflation is hitting everybody. We are expecting our natural gas bill to be double what it's typically been. Our insurance policies are looking at a 10% increase. We have minimum wage increases that we need to put into place. We need to really address inflation as it pertains to our staff and hiring and retention. So we may be looking at a deficit budget for next year. We also want to hire a music director. We know how much this church loves music, and it's an important part of our culture here, an important part of worshiping Jesus. And we've also had our Imagine campaign. The support of those dollars has been completed, and we have spent according to that plan. Church Council spent those funds. So we're looking at a possible deficit next year, but we know that we have the cash to support that because we have been blessed, again, by all of you and by good stewarding of the resources that we have. But going forward, we're going to continue to need that support, as Theresa mentioned, that we have to continue to all support it and be generous to keep that going. So I appreciate every one of you and everything that you've done, and I look forward to continuing the ministry that we have here at Trinity. Pastor?
So we do have a little bit more that we're going to talk about here, but let me just pause here really quick for any clarifying questions you have so far. We've got some other business items that we'll talk about, for instance, like the community center, and kind of a little bit more on where we're at with our financials. So we'll get to that if you have any questions about those things. But for now, any clarifying questions that you might have about anything we talked about with things that we celebrated during the pandemic, anything regarding our mission and vision, our values, our pillars, and then anything from these last two slides that we talked about, some budget impacts, anything like that. We do also want to be done before 2. Yeah.
We are recording this.
It's for the millions of people listening to you online right now.
I deny anything I say. This is being recorded. You're talking about community outreach. I'm paraphrasing here, of course. If you look at our website, we do not list ministries and the functions that they do. You can go on to, if you want to go worldwide, and look at some of the larger ones like Saddleback out of California, even that other one up there in Barrington somewhere. But the thing of it is, though, that they list specific ministries for specific things. And with everything that's going on in the country, we can all, complain about the COVID, but we can complain about the opioid crisis. We can complain about the suicide crisis, particularly among the young. There are innumerable things, if you will, that are going on in the world. And if you don't have a ministry to address each one of them, where is the inducement for someone to come here when they could perhaps go someplace else for assistance? So I guess my question is, what plans are being made, or are they being made, to address the social issues that we face that can then be tied into people coming to the church for that particular service, whether it be family ministry or what have you?
Yeah, thank you. So I appreciate that because I think that, especially coming out of the pandemic, we're going to start seeing a lot of those things. And that's where I think that Trinity really relies on you as Trinity's membership, right? To tell us, well, what do we need to provide? What kind of ministries do we need to provide? What kind of things do we need to provide in our community? What are people going through? What are people feeling? And how do we apply the gospel of Jesus to that, right? I mean, that's what our vision is all about, seeing the gospel alive in our community. And I think that's a huge way of doing that, right? So I guess what I'm saying is I'm going to look back to you guys a little bit for that. Because I think my understanding is that we used to have like a lot of staff. Is that right? Like a lot of staff? And that was maybe years and years ago. Our staff is a little bit smaller now. And I think that as we kind of brace for the future, but also prepare for the future, we're probably looking at a future where we don't have a booming staff that can do anything and everything. But I think that's also a good thing, all right? Because as much as I love our staff, Trinity Lutheran Church is not made up of staff. It's made up of you, right? You are the church. And when I get excited about the future, and what the church is doing in our world in the future, I don't think, boy, we're going to have a rock star staff that's going to do it all, right? I think about how you are disciples of Jesus and how Jesus is going to use you as part of the church to help our world and to aid our world, right? Because I think that's how God uses the church. So, long answer to your question, I would say that if you've got an idea for a ministry, or if there's something that's really tugging on your heart, let us know how we can help you make that possible. How we can help you to get in there, if you will, for Jesus and affect that change in our community and in our world. But like I said, if you've got suggestions about things that, hey, maybe we as Trinity should be providing this, let's hear them. Let's do it. Yeah. Yeah, with suicides and whatnot?
Recording this so that folks who couldn't come here today will be able to watch it at a later date. So
Yeah, there's like 1 million people watching online right now.
The gentleman over there, I don't know your name, I'm sorry, just mentioned, Joe, just mentioned several areas, and
Right.
I don't feel like you addressed any of those. My other community outreach, we have a huge Hispanic community. Some
Yeah.
are involved in churches. We never have any outreach. We don't have anybody that speaks Spanish. It seems like there's no vision for that. Okay, I have that burden, but you got to have the church leadership and staff that share it.
Right.
Whether it's opioid, suicide, mental health, you have to have people on staff that that's their vision, and they don't just think, well, it's not a Lutheran thing. I've heard this, so therefore we won't do it. Another one I hope in the future is Compassion, to have a Compassion Sunday.
Yeah.
There's tons of Compassion supporters. Maybe next year, okay? But the church has to be behind it, the pastor has to be behind it, or else it doesn't ever happen. So that's what I'd like to say, and I can email, but again, if it's not in the church vision, it falls on deaf ears.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I do think, I see that diversity in our community with Spanish-speaking folks. I know that we've got some Polish-speaking folks and whatnot too. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, so I think that actually, I would like to see the church look a little bit more like heaven, right? Heaven is not just going to be the white folks or English-speaking folks. It's going to be very diverse, right? And so I think, boy, we see our community around us. How are we reaching out to our community? It might be finding who knows Spanish and finding ways to bring Jesus to them in Spanish too. Things like that. So I think outreach is that, and I think that us coming together and actually talking about, well, how do we reach out to those in our community is an important thing. Yeah. Haley, you know Spanish, right? All right. Thank you. See, we're already stepping up. This is great.
So kind of as a response to that, and also I had an additional question. I think, so I do speak Spanish. I'm a dual language teacher, but I think to have people have a ministry for that, you have to have a leader and enough people that are interested that you can, and being in the Hispanic community a lot. My husband is Hispanic, but not as much of a talker as me. I think word of mouth is huge in that community, and I used to teach at a Lutheran grade school in the city that actually changed its name because it was Lutheran and it wasn't getting the same sort of reception. So that's a whole paradigm shift, I think. But I think because we don't have the membership, we don't have a huge Hispanic membership either, so it goes hand in hand. I know that I'm on the church council. I don't have a cool badge yet, but we've been talking about, communicating with the congregation, and I would definitely be willing to, translate things. But I think that as we were talking about, who we are as, we want to be more diverse, but I think where we are right now, to be able to tackle that with a good footing and with support from the church, I think we just have to, I think it's starting slowly, because if we don't have the expertise for how to reach that community or enough people to do it, I think we're trying to figure out right now what are our strengths and how can we best use the people that are in leadership, and how can they motivate or mobilize the people in the congregation who maybe have those gifts or have those abilities, but they don't make them known. So Hispanic ministry is something that's very, very important to me as well. So I'm sure we'll be talking with the council about that. I think we just, in the past, have had so many reaches that it got a little overwhelming, especially for the staff, that because you can't do everything. So I think maybe if we hear more of, which is why part of the reason we're having this congregation meeting is to hear those voices and see if we can kind of mobilize with the blessing of the leadership to get something started.
Right.
If that makes sense, Sally. That makes sense? Okay. And my question was...
And we're going to move on.
Sorry. Was for the music director, would the music director be primarily for the church and school, or whatever the music director chooses, should he or she take the position?
So that is a conversation we've been having with the teachers. We actually just had a conversation among our teachers this last week. I think that it ends up being a big job where you don't want to burn a music director out by doing everything. But we believe that music is a very important bridge between our church and school. That having kids from the school singing in church is a really important thing. Bringing the church stuff, like Jesus and new songs and old hymns into our school is also an important thing, right? So it's to be honest, it's probably a little bit too big of a job for one person. So it might be like by committee, but that is a huge aspect of what we're looking at when we look at hiring a music director, is how do they help serve as that bridge, or at least a piece of that bridge, between our church and school. So, all right, yeah. Run, Brenda, run. And I will say that we do have a little bit more to go, so I don't want to get you out before 2, or else you'll never come to a congregational meeting again.
I just want to chime in on that
Yeah.
on that music comment. We actually, my oldest, we kept ours at Peacock because there was a great Lutheran.
Put it right by your mouth.
Sorry,
Kiss it.
I'll go down lower. Here we go. That music comment, because we actually kept our oldest when he was younger at Peacock because the music director was awesome. And, to chime in on that, having that person there. Other than that, we had our other two at Trinity, and we didn't want to move that other one away from that music director. So he was so good. He was Lutheran. I'll say that. He retired this year. I don't know if it's something where it could be I can reach out as a volunteer sort of situation, something like that. But it's real important to parents. So,
Yeah.
it's a lot more important to me is the music aspect than the art part.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else? Otherwise, we'll kind of keep on going. All right, let's keep on going. We got another chance for any questions you might have. But let's keep on going here for the sake of time. All right. So just to wrap up a few things and a few business-related items. All right. Just talking about some of the impacts of the COVID era that we've all been living through. Carole mentioned earlier our adult daycare closed with no plans to reopen. How that happened, it was kind of probably kind of a slow, sad death, where all of our staff retired after the pandemic initially closed the adult daycare down. Most of our clients were unable to come back. They either went to some place that were able to accommodate them more during a pandemic, or just were not able to come back for the pandemic. So we probably only would have had a couple of clients at all during the pandemic. And also with that, the child care has already had to open and close constantly throughout the pandemic. Adult daycare gets hit probably a lot harder than almost anybody else when it comes to having to close down, because they're the first ones to close down when they need to close down, right? And then at this point, we would really have to be starting the adult daycare from scratch. So if it's a ministry that we absolutely believe in and love here at Trinity, it's not off the table for the future, but just as a knowledge point for you, at this point, we would have to start it from scratch again, all right? Also, our child care has challenges as well. Our child care does great ministry. We've got a great staff, and Jamie does a great job with our child care. There are some challenges. One is that wages have sharply increased recently due to the minimum wage and things like that. We have had difficulty keeping child care sufficiently staffed, and it's such where there's ratios where it's hard to bring in more kids if you don't have the staff there, because you need to keep those ratios low enough of staff to children. So that creates difficulties just for our child care on a whole, but we've had difficulty hiring. And then COVID is constantly closing down classrooms because child care, again, is one of the first ones to close when it needs to close, and they're pretty strict about that. There's a lot of regulations we have to follow when it comes to that. And then our community center. All right, so this is some stuff for you to know. One is that we have already started evaluating every single ministry we have through the lens of growing lifelong disciples, because we don't want to just have people come and then flare out. We want to have people built up for the future, for the rest of their lives as disciples. And as such, we've been assessing, well, the gifts that we have here, the assets that we have here, the things that God has given Trinity to use to make lifelong disciples. How are we stewarding those things, right? So we've been doing some analysis, and we know right now that we underutilize both campuses. We've got two major footprints. We've got two major buildings and properties, and just being honest about it, right now we underutilize both of them. My understanding is that this place used to be buzzing, that there's a lot of stuff going on. And there's still a lot of stuff going on, but it's not quite the buzz that maybe it used to be. And it's the same way as kind of for the community center as well. It's just not as much going on that it maybe has the capacity to do. And we're also realizing that we are missing some opportunities with both our youth and childcare by not having them better integrated into the rest of the ministries that we do, right? So to have childcare have more families enroll in our school, to be able to participate in chapel, to have our staff be able to integrate together and support each other and to have ideas together, right? Things like that. And some of it's due to COVID, but some of it is also due to just the fact that we've got distance, right? Two different buildings that you have to almost drive or have a long walk between, right? And then same thing with our youth. Our youth are wonderful. Our DCEs do a wonderful job with that. But how do we signal to the youth that, hey, you are important to us. We want to have you as part of our church, not necessarily in a separate building, but we want to have you feel important to Trinity like you're vital, right? And how do we integrate them into more of what we do at Trinity, so it's not just kind of the youth doing their own thing in one spot and Trinity doing their other thing in a different spot, right? And the other thing is that our community center has over $1.5 million in deferred maintenance and upgrades that are needed in the next few years. So these are all things that are kind of on our mind as we evaluate really our community center. So all that is to say that our plan right now for the near future is that we are planning on listing the community center for sale right now. And then because we're still doing ministry over there, we still got activities going on over there, that if we were to sell right now, then we could lease it back for as long as we need it. We can make that part of the agreement. Or we can delay that sale until such a time as we would be able to integrate those ministries into our main campus. We also want to begin exploring integration of those ministries here at the main campus, and we want to start exploring that right now, and even considering things like renovations to this campus to accommodate that level of ministry. Because we kind of want that buzz back, right? We want to see this place hopping. We want to see a lot of things happening for Jesus. We also want all of our ministries to be working together because we believe that when ministries work together, they help create lifelong disciples, right? Because you hand somebody off to a different ministry that hands them off to another ministry, hands them off to another ministry, and nobody kind of falls off any cliffs, right? We want to get rid of cliffs. We don't like cliffs in Illinois, right? And then we also want to say at this moment that youth ministry is vital to Trinity. It is vital. It's important. Our youth need us, right? And frankly, we need them. We need to see that Jesus is not just for one set of people, but he's for all people, right? He's for the old and the young alike, right? Our youth are not just the future church. They're the church right now too, right? And we want them to know that, and we want them to know that they are important, all right? So I want to make sure you hear this. When we talk about listing the community center, it does not mean shutting down our youth program. In fact, if we were to sell our community center, it means that we want to strengthen our youth program. Because, again, Erica, Haley, Pastor Mark, they do a great job. We want to support them in what they do. And yeah, let's clap. We want to be a church that's known for loving youth and really integrating them into what we do as a church, right? I know that personally, I was blessed by having a church that had a wonderful youth program, and they integrated the youth into everything. It was awesome, and we want our church to be a place where youth thrive. So, in doing that, then we want to create a space here at the main campus like it has now at the community center. So that would be our plan. So youth coming here, we would not just find a broom closet and say, well, you can put a pool table in there and there you go, right? If and when we were to sell the community center, we would want to start having plans and eventually do some sort of renovation so that they have a wonderful youth center, because having a good youth space tells the youth that they are important to us, right? It tells them that, hey, we value you, we want you here, this is your church, all right? And then finally, we also would be planning to integrate a financially self-sustaining, all right, infant through 3-year-old childcare to our main campus. And the timeline for all this is looking at like late 2023 is when we want to have that done by. But we want it to be a childcare that is financially feasible and financially self-sustaining. But also, right now our childcare goes past 3 years old. We want to cut it off at 3 because guess what? We also have a preschool, right? And our preschool kind of leads into our school. You see what we're doing here? We want people to enroll their kids in childcare so that they would also then have them in preschool, in the school, and thereon, right? We don't want to be competing against ourselves, right? And we think that also having the childcare here will kind of show off, hey, we got a cool looking school, right? Great teachers, handsome pastors, and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's our plan. And just some final updates that don't have to do with the community center, but it's still good for you to know. We are still searching for a principal. By the way, if you know of any names of principals, we would like to call a rostered LCMS principal. If you have any principals that you want to send our way, please let us know their names. But we do have a call committee that's searching for a principal right now. I'm on that call committee. Laura Peel, she's one of our teachers, and so is Kim Epting. They both serve on our call committee to kind of represent the teachers, if you will. We also have Julie Bjorkland, Melanie Behrens, David Kelly, and Leah Huffman. In forming this call committee, we wanted to have teacher input. We wanted to have parents' input from our school. We also wanted to have input from our congregation as well, so that we all get kind of so that all of that is represented in the kind of principal that we have who kind of sees the whole picture, right? Sees all of it and is working alongside all the other ministries. Dawn has done a wonderful job here. We are going to miss her dearly. We're going to grieve her leaving. Like I said a few weeks ago when we announced that she did accept the call to Mount Prospect, we also realized that we are part of the greater church, that God can kind of do whatever he wants. And if God sees fit to have one of his servants serve somewhere else, then we say, okay, Lord, we're not happy about that, but okay, right? And we're glad that God has seen fit to use Dawn somewhere else, that her gifts can be used there. And then we also trust God that he's going to continue to be with Trinity and provide for our needs and to help lead our school, right? So please, please, please pray for Dawn, pray for Mount Prospect, because that's no small thing. Transitioning to a new place as a new principal at a new school, right? But also keep Trinity in your prayers. Because this is also an important season for us as we look for the next leader of our school in our principal. So that's that. Finally, just as a quick business item, we want you to come to the polls, vote early and vote often, as they say in Illinois, right? We got our council and elder elections June 5th through 12th. So you'll be able to cast a vote both weekends. Preferably only once, right? But just choose the weekend you want to cast a vote on. So please participate in that, all right? Did I miss anything? All right. They were supposed to chime in, and they never did. All right, so questions? No questions. All right, thanks, everybody.
Oh, well, I've been a member of Trinity over 80 years. I've seen Trinity go from a small school to building a bigger school, a small church to building a bigger church, increasing community involvement by building a community center where we can give services to non-members of our church. We have a tutoring program for children from Lake Park coming in. Our teachers are tutoring them on whatever subjects they need. We have a fantastic facility there for youth, and youth is we've been talking a lot about missions. And I think that the youth group is probably one of our biggest local missions we have. We've had a lot of youth bring their friends to the Sunday night experience. Yeah. Their friends have become members. Their parents have become members. I think that these same youth, if they invited a friend to come here, say, no, I don't want to go to church. Come to community center is a different thing. We got a beautiful facility there for daycare, and I do not believe we should be selling the daycare center. I believe I've been through a number of fundraising campaigns in this church, like we just finished the Imagine one, and I think if it's really necessary, we could start a fundraising campaign to get these repairs done to the community center. We could also reach out further with the community center. We said we got excess space over there. I understand that Phil's Friends, which was founded by an ex-teacher of Trinity, the Cancer Outreach, has to leave their facility. We could offer one of their rooms for them to work out of by having them just pay utilities or something like that they are in their current position. I am firmly against getting rid of the daycare center, and many of the people in this room that I've talked to are also firmly against it. Thank you for your time.
Kim. We have a daughter who has graduated and is in college. We currently have a daughter who goes to youth group every Sunday night, and we have a son that will be coming up after he's confirmed this fall. I just hope, I don't know the way everything works, but I would hope maybe next time this could be brought to our congregation like this to discuss this, and just get the feel, if there's so many different types of people here that have different opinions, but I think it's just good to hear everything. I have seen the youth group back from when I was a kid, and we hung out like in the staff lounge, I think. I've seen it when they had this room over here as the youth group, and then the community center, I think, has just been awesome. I know it also has a lot to do with our leadership, so thank you to all of you that have worked with our young teens. And if this is going to be a sale, I really, really hope that you give them the best place where they can bring their friends, because I totally agree. My kids are kind of like, they're ready to move on out of this building. They've been here since they were 3, and they love that they get to go somewhere else that's really cool to them. And I totally agree with Ray that bringing a friend there is so much easier, and I think it's just less intimidating for those kids who don't even know Jesus, and it's a community center. I think that is an awesome point. And so if this is really going to happen, I think it's vital that there is a different space for them. Also, the part about the care center, again, I do not know all the goings-on about that, but as a teacher, immediately I feel like, what does that mean for us? Are, moving classrooms, are we building, all of those kind of things. So I just hope going forward we could have more information just throughout the whole process. I would appreciate that.
So can I just add, just to help everybody understand, we've been having these conversations and we've come up with a lot of the same questions and comments as you all. In order for us, this isn't a done deal, but in order for us to be able to find out what the opportunities are for the community center, who would be interested in it, we have to be able to list it to be able to find out, to do that fact finding. Does that make sense? So we're in the process of trying to get information to get a better plan. So unfortunately, in order for us to fill in some of the gaps, we had to say we were going to list it to engage a realtor partner, that's their expertise, to help us find out who would be interested in the community center. Does it really make sense for us to sell it? So it's just it's getting facts. I would say, right, it's not a done deal. Am I right in that? Okay.
So if I can just also add that I think somebody mentioned Phil's friends. There are some parties in our community that do have some interest in using space at the building. So we do have a lot of interest, but I am also, and most of us on the team are not well-versed in commercial real estate. So we do need somebody who will provide the expertise to help us vet if we were to lease the building to parties and what that would look like. So we are trying to be good stewards, again, of the resources that we have and make good decisions, but we do need other partners who have that knowledge and expertise to help guide us through this process. Does that make sense?
Okay, I'm not sure if any of you can answer this question for us, but there's a lot of quilting and days for girls that are going on in there. What would happen to us if you decide to renovate or to relocate?
Sorry, what would happen to? Oh, one of our goals, I think, in renovating this campus would be to have lots of places for community to thrive. I think I mean, honestly, in coming here, one of the words that I heard from you was just the desire and need for community. So groups like quilters, I think having a place where we can have people like that, different groups on this campus coming together for community is a really important thing. So I don't have like the exact answer for you right now, but that would be our goal. My vision would be to have like this building be a community center, right? I think that actually having the church so well known and well thought of in our community that people are like, yeah, that's like a community center. That's where I go to be part of a community to do these things. I think that's kind of a good thing. I think it'd be weird and wrong if our church was not thought of as a place for community, right?
Okay, before there's any other questions, I just want to talk just for a minute. I'll get to you, I promise. So, as you know, youth ministry has been my life's work. And the community center, that youth area, every brushstroke has been brushed with love. And every single nook and cranny of that was, designed by me, right? And together with the youth leaders and the church and the youth, we built that thing to just incredible heights. But I also believe, with everything in me, that the church is not a building, it's the people. It's all the people, all the kids, and all the parents that are leaning into our faith. We were the Sunday night experience before the community center, and the reason I got the go-ahead to move to the community center is because we were putting 50, 60 kids in the marketplace down in the corner, and we really needed to have a different space. And I have every confidence that we're going to be able to bring the youth down here and have an excellent space for them to worship. It's not the space, it's the people. Some of the best worship I've had has been with an acoustic guitar, 60 kids, and the Holy Spirit. It doesn't have anything to do with the space. It has everything to do with who we are and how we grow and the example that we set. So I have no issue if we end up selling the community center that we are able to have a space down here, and it will grow and it will thrive and it will be as good, if not better, than what we have now. So.
Hi, so I'm Gabby. Many of you have probably seen me on the 411. I've been involved in the youth ministry for as long as I can remember. My dad has been an adult leader in the youth group since we were in the marketplace, and I was going there as an 8-year-old to listen to him give the message before Allegro Bells. So, and then I went to confirmation. I've been down at the community center with SNX for years. I've been a student leader, and now I'm going to be a junior leader on the mission trip this summer now that I'm in college. So I have seen a lot of stages of the youth group. I've even seen the DCs before Mark was here, and he's been here a while. So I love the youth group. It's probably the thing that I'm most passionate about that this church does. And I have concerns, but I'm not against this sale because I think if it's necessary, we are called to use our gifts as well as we can. So my concern is not that we're selling the building. While I love the community center, and I do think that we could really hurt the youth group if we do this the wrong way. Like, do not get me wrong. If we sell this building and try to move the youth group into the gym, I mean, it's not going to be what it is. We're not going to have 100 kids or 60 kids on a regular week if we're just in a gym setting up chairs without a real space. So I guess my concern is that you mentioned selling it now, but then the plans to do renovations are kind of up in the air. So, or whether it's renovations, creating a space, whatever that is. So I guess my question is, if we're selling the building now, when do those plans start? Because I think those plans need to start now. Because I get that you're saying like this whole lease thing where like we put in the contract that like we can lease it for as long as we need. I don't know how all of that works, but my instinct would be that if we're selling it to someone, they're gonna wanna start using it. And if we sell it and then our spaces aren't gonna be ready for a year, I find it a little hard to believe that whoever buys it is gonna be on board with us just using it for an extra year. So I think my big concern is that we need to have these spaces ready so that the childcare and the youth group and the quilters and the dodgeball players that meet there, like all these different groups, have those spaces to go to as soon as it's sold.
So Gabby, as usual, Gabby, you have awesome insight, and we really, really appreciate your input. We really do. So, yes, I agree with everything that you just said, 100%, and we all do. And that those are all of our concerns. So I will say that we are in the process of engaging. We have interviewed a couple of architects, so we are in the process of engaging an architect to help develop those plans to meet the needs that all of you we know are concerned about. We also share those concerns. So we are already down that road. And also we know that this process is a lengthy process. Anything that we do, and we've had many conversations with the real estate broker, that these are important things to us. We're not going to sell next week and, oh my gosh, we have to move tomorrow. We are not. He's been fully versed in the fact that we have needs that have to be met, we have to have a plan, and we have to have the time to execute those. And so we are all in this together, and we are not going to move faster than we can move.
Hey, Carole, is there, just because I know we're running out of time, is there someone particular that we could bring questions to? Do they address comments or questions that they have about the community center or any information about the congregation meeting? Would those go to Pastor or you? Okay, so without the microphone, she said herself. So I think if anybody has any more questions regarding that, definitely pass it through there.
Jeremy, something else I'll also say is that one of the things we're also looking at and starting right away is what we might call like town halls, where between our services, especially during the summer here when Elevate is on hiatus, having town halls where you can talk to myself, you can talk to our council, you can ask questions, you can give suggestions, all that kind of stuff. So this is not your only opportunity to do that. You'll have more things coming probably within the next few weeks.
Just a couple of things. The first is that while...
Can you hold it close to your mouth?
I'm sorry. For dollars and cents questions, first of all, do we have debt against the community center?
The lien is on both properties. We have confirmation from the bank that this property is enough to support that loan. So that will not be an issue. As an aside, we have almost $1.7 million on our mortgage that will be paid down in 6.5 years. So that's also something to celebrate. We've done a great job with that here too, managing our debt.
Sorry. You made a reference to, in your earlier remarks, about there being excess cash likely at the end of this fiscal year, at the end of June, and then made a reference to there being a anticipated deficit in the next budget. Were you saying that the cash that's available, or left over, if you will, is enough to cover that deficit going forward?
Yes.
Okay.
So 1.5 to fix stuff up there, so it's up and running. Do we have a number for the church to keep fixed and up and running? And construction is at an all-time high right now for fixing stuff, just so everyone's aware.
Do we have any maintenance around here that needs?
So we have done, the roof projects. We did the roof with some of that cash surplus that we had. We were able to do the roof. We were able to do the parking lot this summer. We're doing some landscaping that needs to be replaced. We're using New Year's Eve memorial funding for that. Some of the funding that it's a cash surplus is going to support the restricted funds that has been an ongoing issue here. That we have not been able to support those with cash on hand. Now we can do that. Another success. So we always have ongoing projects, and we budget for those every year. So we have a running list of maintenance coming up, but we are confident that we're able to do that with the cash on hand.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Zidney. I've been a member for, I don't know, a few years now, not 80, but a little bit. I have a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old who attend the preschool here. They attended to daycare, so Trinity's been a part of my family's life since really the very beginning. So I just want to provide the perspective that it kind of breaks my heart to not think of other kids going to, the care center, but the care center will be here. And I think that's what's important, is that there is a care center. It's great that the youth have a place to go where they feel comfortable when they're in high school. What happens when they leave high school? What happens when they go to college? Maybe they find something similar in college, but then what? Where do they go? They haven't been in the church. They don't feel comfortable in the church because it's not a place for them. So do they come back? I go to the 8:30 service. Take a look around. There are not young families there. I was at the 11 o'clock service today. There were more young families. We need to make this building accessible to young families so it can continue to grow. So anyway, that's why I am supportive of selling the care center or the community center, while agreeing we have to continue those ministries here. I'm also on the finance council, so I see the monthly financial statements for the church, the school, the community center, and I do think it is the most fiscally responsible choice as well. So, thank you.
Hi, I just have one question. Has anyone guesstimated the cost of retrofitting this building and weighted against the 1.5 million that's anticipated with the other one?
Yeah, thank you. And that part of that is one of the reasons why we're reaching out to architects. The other thing about selling the community center is that you can then use the cash that you get from that to invest into this building. So I think that it would be feasible, and from my perspective, again, as the newbie kind of here and just kind of getting a lay of the land over the last couple of years, it does seem like the most fiscally responsible thing to do, but also the best stewardship of our resources as a congregation is to let's invest in having a spectacular campus that can be a good place for all these ministries. So I think that I guess personally, I'd rather, if I'm going to invest 1.5 million in a building, I think that 1.5 million would go a lot further here than it would the community center.
Where'd the other one go? Jeremy, what are you doing? Come on, Jeremy.
Hi, so I'm one of the leaders at youth group every week. I'm with these kids. I know them, I know their struggles, I know, why they come, why they don't. I'm not against the sale. If it's the fiscal responsible thing, I think that's probably what's best. But to your point earlier about them not having a place after high school, that starts with us. Like, the reason the kids don't feel comfortable here is probably because they feel judged, or they feel like they're dismissed. Who are these young people? So just as an encouragement, like, when you see them in church, tell them, hey, I'm so glad to see you here. Encourage them to come here, because right now they don't want to, because they think of it as a place where they're judged, where they're not welcome. So welcome them, and they will come. Thanks.
Sorry, not to beat a dead horse, but so I appreciate your response, to my question and everything. But then when you say that we're going to use the cash from the community center
to renovate the spaces here, that would imply that we would have to sell the community center before we could renovate the spaces here. So that kind of goes back to my concern of it not being ready. And I also think that like if we're gonna make these spaces, the employees at the childcare and our DCEs like need to be in that process, because if anybody knows what's best for those ministries, it's those people who are actively involved in them. So I think like through this process, we need to make sure they're involved, and like, I feel like I keep saying it, but I feel like this needs to be done before it's sold. So I guess I'm just concerned, like, if we're planning to use the money from the sale to do that, how is that gonna work? And if we are going to do it ahead of time, where's that money gonna come from then? And how are we gonna like depend on money that we don't have?
Hey, Gabby. I want to make a disclaimer. First of all, I am not a real estate agent, okay? That is not my specialty. But I have had to do some commercial leasing for work. So I get to understand just a little bit behind the scenes. And if we have anyone who's in commercial real estate, you know, this is your chance, your shining moment. Leasebacks are super common. And then things moving very slowly in commercial real estate is really common too. So a lot of times, like if you're gonna lease a space, they assume you're not gonna be up and running for 6 months, 9 months, because there's a lot of build out and construction. You've got to get loans, you've got to talk to architects. It's not like residential mortgages or leases for an apartment or you know, buying a house or selling a house. So listing the property was crucial for us to start getting more information. Like, for instance, someone brought up Phil's Friends. Well, if we want to talk to Phil's Friends about using that space, we need someone who knows about commercial real estate to be that in-between person to see if it's feasible, if we can partner with them, or with other churches, or with other community organizations. So to list that property was crucial to start talking with those other organizations to see if we can work together. That was also crucial for us then to start talking to the architects and start dreaming about like, what could things look like at the community center if we do like lease with someone else and share that space? Do some renovations there. What about renovations here? What will we have to do to make this place really dynamic for a great youth program, a great school, and a great child care center? Both of my kids went to the child care center when they were little. We had a death of our nanny, and they really came through at a really difficult time. And then we transitioned my kids over here to the school. So the school means a lot to my family as well. And I have a son who's in 5th grade. He's about ready to start confirmation. So the youth center and the community center, in confirmation is going to be really important for my family too. So I just want to let you guys all know that all of us on church council, we are 100% invested in all these programs and understand how important it is to all of us. But some of these things, it sounds kind of weird to list to community center, like it's a done deal, like we're selling it tomorrow, but it really is the start of a process to get all this information we need to make these right decisions. So, thank you.
My name's Nelson. Just what the community center means, what the community center means to my family. My granddaughter, she graduated last year, and my wife also passed away last year. So she was so depressed that she was diagnosed as suicidal. So she still kept her base here at Trinity, although she's with Glenbard West now. I used to drop her every day here in the afternoon. She was an assistant to Miss Peel with the play which recently took place. Then every Sunday she makes sure that she goes to the community center, and I drop her there, and that has been so therapeutic for her. So that is, I thank the community center and Pastor Mark, and I hope this community center, everybody will has some issues. So I'm sure this community center is a great source of comfort and progress to our teenager children. And I pray that the community center stays, or if it improves, they should let us, I wish it all the best to find some improvement in this building. Thank you. God bless you.
Oh, one more.
One more? All right, I do want to point out that in the state of Montana, it is only 1:15, but right now it's 2:15 in Illinois. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Joe.
Just some institutional history on this. I was on church council, forgive me, at the time that the community center was purchased, when it was Markham. I don't know if those of you who are longtime members remember or not, but Trinity used to own 3 or 4 houses. Those houses were sold to help pay for a down payment on that community center. Those houses were sold, the decision to buy it was the worst time, in my opinion, and I expressed it at the church council. Of course, those of you who know me, I'm very shy, but we sold those houses in a depressed and going down faster retail market. Not only that, in my opinion, the due diligence wasn't done enough on that building when it was purchased because of the asbestos surprises that came up, added tens of thousands of dollars onto that cost. I see now 1.5 million to go into what, I forget the name of the movie where everything kept breaking. So my point is, I personally would be in favor of selling it, taking the money into a structure that we already own, that we can shift away one mortgage, put the money here, and the other thing is, if we ever held a really big event, where are people going to park over there? They don't have it. There's a lot of downside to owning that community center. Yeah, there's a lot of things that people enjoy about it, but personally, I'd be in favor of selling it. So that's all I just wanted to say. Thank you.
All right. It is 2:15, and I want to honor your time. I apologize for going 15 minutes over. Like I said earlier, we are planning on doing some what we're going to call like town halls or something along those lines, where you can get together with myself, you can get together with council, and just ask questions or talk about things. Myself, and I'm going to volunteer both Carole and Brenda, the other pastors. If you've got questions, please corner us. Please ask us. You can email. We're very open and willing to talk about these things, and we want to hear your opinions. We want to hear your thoughts. I firmly believe that the church is all of us together, and you are an important part of the church. We're all the body of Christ, and we need each other. So please continue to talk. Let's be supportive of each other. Pop quiz. What is our mission going forward? Growing lifelong disciples. Thank you, Erica. Yep. And our vision is seeing the gospel alive where? Family, church, and community. So please start getting that down. Quiz yourself, all that kind of stuff, because that's our shared mission and vision together. We want that to be your mission and vision going forward, because we want to position ourselves as a church, as a school, as a child care for the future, and to make those lifelong disciples. So thank you.